one of my fears, one of my concerns, Representative, is that you won't be around to explain this bill when it comes to be applied.
I'm sure people will be watching this for a long time.
Well,
but in fairness, that's why I said the intent is less important than what is written. That's why it's important to actually look what's in the bill as opposed to what's written, in newspaper articles.
And I think that's fair. And so I'd like to talk to you about what's in the bill in particular to clear some things up. First, I think that the centerpiece of the discussion today is about the term sincerely held religious belief. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And where is that defined? Where can we find a definition of what that means?
Can I phone a friend? There is case law on it, and I think really for the vast majority of what we're talking about, and again, this is only used for declining services. It's not, some people start to say, well, what if they think you should be able to do this to a child?
I understand.
Or that to a child. It's declination of services, and a couple of them are listed in the bill.
Right. But you and I agree that you're not going to be here to explain it to people. So
yes, but I said what was in the bill.
Right.
As well.
So the term sincerely held religious belief is in the bill, and I'm asking if there is a definition of what that is.
There is in practice, but I do not have it.
And so in your mind, when we included that phrase in the bill, what were we trying to accomplish? What was the purpose of including it in the bill?
Well, and first, we laid out a couple of specific examples. But I do think we have had courts rule on the sincerely held religious beliefs.
Sure, I'm asking about what that is the point of the conversation right now. And so the reason why it's included, the reason why it is the centerpiece of the conversation is because of what? Why is it important to include it in the bill is the question.
Is because we want to make reasonable accommodations that there are people actually that don't think you should make reasonable accommodations to people in the child welfare system if their perspective and point of view is different than theirs. They want to essentially say, it doesn't matter what your religious belief is, you must do this regardless.
And so the sincerely held religious belief as employed in the bill would mean, in that example, well, actually, I don't have to do that. I can do something else. Is that right?
I can have, and again, in the foster care system, any CPS person worth their salt is going to make reasonable accommodations to good CPS homes. You can call and say, I can't get to the doctor today. Can you drive my child? So
Representative Frank,
there are reasonable accommodations made
I want to assure
all the time.
I want to assure I'm not trying to argue with you, but I am trying to understand what the purpose of the phrase means in the bill, because it seems to be why we're here today and why people are standing there is that's an important factor.
Right.
And so what I heard you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I do not want to get that incorrect. What I heard you say is there's a sort of belief or a tie that says you must do X, Y, and Z, and that may run afoul of people's sincerely held religious beliefs, and by including it here, it allows them to assert those beliefs and perhaps not be caught in that tide. Is that right? It's not meant to be a trick question.
Sorry, Yes.
Okay. And so I'm looking at page 4, starting at line 8.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The sincerely held religious belief has been in court cases for decades. So I don't think while I'm, I can try to go get the law. I believe that is something that is used pretty frequently, both at the federal and other state level.
And maybe Krause can answer this. Do we use that phrase currently in code in Texas? Does it exist elsewhere?
Can I have him? Is that inappropriate to have him step in?
Chair recognizes Mr. Krause.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, currently, as Representative Turner talked about earlier, in our Texas RFRA, we do have sincerely held religious belief.
Okay, so it's not defined here, but we have it somewhere.
Well, it's not really defined anywhere, and I think we don't want the government necessarily defining what somebody's sincerely held religious belief is. All that allows is the vehicle for you to be pled for it, and when you go into a court proceeding, and then you have to back that up with certain facts. But there's no actual definition to what sincerely held religious belief is, but it has a long history and a litany of cases, both federal and state.
And Representative Krause, I would argue, since you're here, and certainly I don't want to argue with the representative, but I would argue that that if we don't want the government defining it, and at the same time we're creating relationships and contracts with organizations and bestowing that right to them, the government at this point is engaging in the practice. Just making the point. Representative Frank,
Chair recognizes Mr. Frank.
And if I could add, I mean, let's keep in mind what we're doing here. We're trying to make reasonable accommodations for people to step in to very difficult situations. And this adds to the number of people who will participate by just making reasonable accommodations.
I don't question the heart of what we're doing. I don't question the heart of what you're doing. So I understand.
It's not the heart, but it's the we are giving somebody a chance to say.
In our past conversations, you've explained to me that we are not talking about the placement of children, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking sort of more about the recruitment of families, the recruitment of potential placements. Is that correct?
That's correct, because again, in the CPS system, all of the removals and all of the placements are done by either CPS or an organization that's not covered.
And so
this.
As that activity relates to sincerely held religious beliefs and the section on page 4 that we're talking about right now, does that mean then if the purpose of the bill is about recruitment and not placement?
Mr. Hefner calls the point of order. The gentleman's time's expired.